Hey guys, this is Infinite Flash here. Today I'm going to be talking about what happened in round 7 of yesterday's Sinquefield Cup tournament hosted in St. Louis. In this game, we have Veselin Topalov playing white against Levon Aronian playing black. Not much to say. I mean, these guys don't really are pretty well known across the chess world. Topalov started out with d4, and we quickly get after knight f6, Aronian playing knight f6. A queen's gambit declined in this position. Topalov actually, instead of g3 and I think bishop f4, just decided to play with knight c3, and very similar to yesterday's game, we get this knight bd7 and knight c3 setup that was played in, if I recall correctly, Caruana or MBL versus Caruana. And in this game, Topalov actually chose an interesting setup with an early g3 pawn push, planning to defeat and shadow the bishop over here. And against this pawn move, the problem is that this pawn is always hanging, so white has not committed to e4 yet, and yet generally speaking, after the move Aronian played, which is pawn takes pawn, you don't want to play e4 here because white has already played g3, and clearly, if let's say if black plays bishop e7, white would capture here, and you've left the g3 pawn push, kind of making a weakness here on the g2 square, and that's not ideal for white. So instead of e4, white continues with bishop g2, relying on the fact with the pawn not here on d5 and deciding to capture over here, you can kind of rely on this open diagonal. And black immediately got his rook out of that fire range and tries to preserve b5 in this position. In this position, white can certainly play queen a4, but I think black would continue with a6, and if white captured the pawn, I think b5 is kicking away the queen, and if the queen goes here, I think just bishop b7. Black, although white has the extra center pawn here, he has very, very nice and fluid development. Black would continue with bishop e7, or let's say castles first, bishop e7. I'm not sure what white would do, probably maybe bishop f4 or something. And then eventually, after future preparations with rook c8, I think black would play c5 and is very, very comfortable in this position. So this kind of explains why, this is certainly acceptable for white, but Topalov didn't really want, he wanted to capture here on c4 with the knight instead, and instead he decides to prevent b5 here first, and this kind of prevents the a6 idea I was kind of talking and mentioning in this position. In this position, I think the only problem I have with a4 is that what happens after this move is that the b4 square is really, really weak, and once you play this kind of move, I think black can immediately play bishop b4, and both sides just decided to castle in this position, castles, castles, and white would really like to gain the pawn back, so he brought the knight back here to take on c4, and after e5, black manages to free up his game, potentially move the knight out here and get his bishop outside the pawn barrier that was once here with the e6 pawn here. White continued with knight takes c4, and after pawn takes d4, queen takes d4 looks natural. White can also consider, knight b5 followed by knight takes d4. And by the way, you can't really save the pawn over here because of bishop f4, and suddenly there's a catastrophe here on the dark squares with either knight jumping over here. Looks just awful here for black. So of course, after takes, that was certainly an option, but queen takes d4 instead was played. Knight c5, and after queen takes d8, there's not much better. I mean, all of black's pieces are very, very, let's say, well placed in the center. So queen takes d8, rook takes d8, bishop f4 to attack the the c7 pawn, knight e6 to gain a tempo on this bishop. White retreated the bishop over here. It doesn't really have a better square. And in this position, black had to defend the a7 pawn because it's actually just hanging in this position. And in this specific position, we saw kind of a repetition of moves. White decided to play knight e5, just placing this knight on a good square, a good central square, centralizing it. And I mean, after this, black decided to play bishop d6, attacking the knight, and we got a few repetitions of moves. And here in this position, instead of repeating and going for a draw, Topalov, he plays for the nice c file pressure right over here, potentially against the black's queen side in this position. I am also having quite a bit of technical difficulties over here. There are quite a number of glitches with the live board over here. White could also consider rook fd1. Perhaps this is a better option, and this is kind of forcing black's hand over here. I think after bishop d7 by black, white would have knight e5, attacking this bishop over here, and bishop e8. Hard to say what best continuation is. Perhaps rook ac1, and the position is quite okay for both sides. That was just another option. In the game, Topalov chose rook fc1, and the thing about this move is that at least rook d1 prevented knight d4. And in this position, Aronian took his chance and played knight d4. And you don't really have a choice but, this knight's coming to b3, so you have to prevent this knight b3 move by taking the knight here. Rook takes d4, and b3, protecting this strong knight on c4. And in this position, black has quite a number of moves. He can probably just develop the bishop outside, the back rank soon, but he decided to solidify the structure so he doesn't really have to worry about the b7 pawn in the future. And this bishop's just bearing down on the queen side. So he played c6, a very solid move. Just making the structure entirely safe, really. And in this position, Topalov didn't really see anything better than a waiting move with h3, controlling the g4 square. Not much of a move, really. And after e3, bishop e6 first, black brought out the bishop to develop that. And in this position, since black is threatening bishop takes c4, he snuck in this move, e3, getting a tempo on this rook, and Aronian decided to bring the rook all the way back. I honestly don't know why he did not play rook d3, attacking the knight, forcing this knight to move, since no other piece can defend this knight right over here. And if the knight goes to a2, attacking this bishop, I believe that rook takes b3, taking the free pawn, is actually just a free pawn for black, really. Perhaps white has some annoying compensation of some sort, but I think this is a very safe pawn to take. In retrospect, I don't think Aronian got much instead of rook d3. He played rook d8, and from here it's very difficult to generate anything. White played knight e2, white played g6, white played knight d4, centralizing the knight, forcing this bishop to go here. And okay, Aronian's position looks steadily pretty nice with the blockaded pawn over here by this bishop. Nice light square control here in the center. Open file to potentially work with. And okay, white has the b6 square, but this doesn't really do anything in the position. It doesn't contribute to any of the main positional factors in this position. And I think both sides are pretty much just making a little bit of waiting moves here and there. h5 by black, rook a4 to gain a tempo against this bishop, bishop c5, and in this position we saw white play bishop takes d5, rook takes d5, and knight e2 because this knight is under attack. And after knight e2, these are pretty natural moves, really. Certainly, I think rook d1 is possible, but black decided to move the bishop out of the way. One idea behind this move is that, I want to move my rook potentially to this square, or maybe I just want to move it out of the way, and my bishop would be x-rayed by this rook right over here, so he doesn't want a loose piece when this rook moves. So he wants to back up the bishop. White played knight c3 and allowed the rook to come over here, attacking the b3 pawn and the tactical justification behind this move is that if white takes the rook with this knight, gaining the material for the moment, black would recapture the a pawn. And after this, he's forking the rook and the knight here. White would probably have to retreat sorry about that. White would have to retreat the rook, and black is actually winning material in this position. So kind of going back, also, by the way, c6 is certainly reasonable, but okay, that's kind of the idea. That's why you can't really take the rook, and since your b3 pawn is under attack, white decided to drop the knight back. No shame in that, I think. And I think in this position, God, that is such a glitchy board right here. Black decided to play rook b4, trading off one of the rooks here, firmly blockading this pawn. These knights are not so great, really, and white didn't really see anything better than just takes, takes, and knight c4. Again, putting the knight over here. So white took the rook, bishop takes b4, knight c4, centralizing this knight. Black brought the rook to the open file here. All this play is really, really logical, and I think the final moves are pretty reasonable as well. This board is refusing to obey me. Knight a2. Oh my god, we know that's not even me making the arrow. Knight a2, this board is refusing to do. Let me pause this. And in this position, as I hope this is the same position as I paused it. Sorry guys, this board is very, very bad and glitchy. We saw white play knight a2, gaining a tempo on this bishop, forcing this bishop to move back. With e7, black has very, very good potential to try to attack the weak pawns, plays knight to e4 or d5, and has a, let's say, a slightly, in my opinion, a slightly more preferable game here. White can still activate his king over here, and he should still be fine in this position, but I would still prefer black. And white didn't really see anything better than just to move his knight back. Black centralized the knight here. White decided to play knight a4, getting more control over the b6 square. On c3, this is actually a nice a4 square that it can kind of influence these arc squares, and the knights can't really be touched here. So, I mean, this is just very nice for black. But white also has his ideas with the nice knights over here. And after knight b4, blockading the pawn once again, controlling this square, controlling these light squares. White decided to bring the king in. Black played rook d3, rook b1 to defend the pawn. Black decided to play knight a2, and in kind of the view, I guess, of I guess, I wonder what thinking. Yeah, I'm not sure about what this move does, guys. I guess Topalov didn't really say anything better than the game continuation, and Aronian for some reason couldn't, let's say, improve the position more. I'm getting steadily better to try to improve that, by the way. That let's say phrase. Rook a1 by white, and after this, I guess Aronian just decided to repeat moves. A very, very surprising result, to be honest, because I would really like to play black's position. Perhaps instead of rook after rook b1, in this kind of position, as we go back, this was a threefold repetition, so a draw was forced. In this position after rook b1, I think black should probably just play f6, planning to move the king over here, infiltrate here, try to improve the position. Black has a very, very stable coordination over here, and definitely he should be the one trying for the win in this position. Although it's very difficult. White has a firm blockade over this b6 square, and it's very difficult to make progress. But still, play out a few more moves. It would have been very nice to see this game be played out a little bit more. Anyways, guys, a very uneventful draw here by Topalov and Aronian. Hope you liked the game, though. Hope it was instructive in some way. Thanks for watching.